Most people who end up wasting their potential weren't lazy, they were gifted. And if that sentence just made something shift in your chest, keep watching. Because what's about to be said here is the thing nobody told you when they were busy calling you special. The thing that would have changed everything, the thing that once you see it will reframe the last 10 years of your life in about 4 minutes. You got the highest grade in the room. Again. The teacher handed back the tests and yours came back first. Because yours always came back first. You didn't even study that hard. That was almost the point. It came easy. And somewhere in the back of your mind you filed that away as proof of something. Proof of you. That was many years ago. Now you have 17 browser tabs open, a document titled Final Version 3 that hasn't been touched in 6 weeks, and a job application you've been meaning to send since last quarter. Not because you're lazy. You're one of the least lazy people you know, at least in your head where everything works perfectly. But somewhere between the kid who finished tests early and the adult who can't finish anything, something broke. And the strange part? The smarter you were, the worse it got. This isn't about motivation. It's not about discipline or mindset or waking up at 5 in the morning. Those things won't touch what's actually happening here, because what's happening is structural. It was built into you slowly, quietly, by the people who were trying to help you. Science has a name for it, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Everything that's stopping you right now started with a compliment. It started with something that felt like love, a gold star, a knowing smile from a teacher, a parent leaning across the dinner table, eyes lit up, saying your name like it meant something, like you meant something, and you did. You just didn't know yet what you were being taught in that exact moment. Not math, not reading, something quieter, something that would follow you for decades. You were being taught that your value lived inside your ability to impress. Nobody planned it. Nobody was cruel. The praise was real, the pride was genuine, but underneath every "you're so gifted" was a blueprint being drawn without your permission. Intelligence became identity. Being smart wasn't something you did, it was something you were. And when a label becomes your foundation, you stop building and start protecting. Here's what that does to a child's brain. Challenge stops feeling like opportunity. It starts feeling like risk. Because if you struggle, if you stumble, if the answer doesn't come fast, what does that say about the one thing everyone believes defines you? The math is brutal and automatic. Effort means doubt. Doubt means maybe the label was wrong. And if the label was wrong, then who exactly are you? So the mind does what minds do. It adapts. It narrows. It steers quietly toward the safe, the familiar, the winnable. You chose tasks you could master. You avoided rooms where you'd be a beginner. You optimized for looking capable rather than becoming it. And every time it worked, every time you walked away with the grade, the compliment, the impressed look, the pattern got stronger. You learned to win quickly. You never learned to lose well. And that gap, invisible for years, was already becoming something far more dangerous than arrogance. There's a version of fear nobody talks about. Not the kind that makes your hand shake or your voice crack. This one is quieter, more sophisticated. It wears the costume of perfectionism, of high standards, of simply not being ready yet. It feels responsible, reasonable, even virtuous. But underneath the surface, something else is running the show, and it has been for a long time. You stopped raising your hand unless you were absolutely certain, not because you didn't know. Often, you knew, but knowing wasn't enough anymore. There was a margin of error you couldn't afford, not because the stakes were high, but because being wrong in public felt like more than a mistake. It felt like evidence. Evidence that maybe the story everyone built around you, the one you quietly built around yourself, wasn't as solid as it looked. So the filter got tighter. The threshold for ready kept rising. You wouldn't post the project until it was perfect. Wouldn't apply until you met every single requirement. Wouldn't walk into the gym if it meant looking like a beginner in front of strangers. And each time you held back, it felt like discipline, like you were protecting quality. But quality wasn't what you were protecting. You were protecting the image. The brutal truth is that failure was never the real threat. Failure happens to everyone. It's expected, absorbed, forgotten. What you feared was something far more specific. Being seen as ordinary, being caught without the gift, standing in a room where the label doesn't fit, and having no backup identity to reach for. That's not a fear of failing. That's a fear of becoming invisible. And to make sure that never happened, your mind built something elegant and invisible in return, a strategy so convincing you never once questioned it. You always had a reason. The timing wasn't right. The idea needed more development. You'd start properly on Monday, when things settled down, when you felt more like yourself. And the reasons were always convincing, because they came from someone intelligent, someone who could construct a flawless argument for almost anything, including their own paralysis. This is what nobody tells you about procrastination. It isn't laziness wearing a disguise, it's armor. Sophisticated, self-constructed, completely invisible from the inside. And it works. That's the part that makes it so hard to dismantle. It actually protects you from the one thing your entire psychological architecture was built to avoid. The moment of honest reckoning. Think about what not trying really offers. If you never submit the work, it can't be rejected. If you never start the business, it can't fail. If you never apply, you never have to sit with the answer. And underneath all of it lives a sentence you've never said out loud, but have felt in your bones for years. I could have done it. I just didn't try. That sentence is a lifeline. It keeps the identity intact. It means the gift is still there, just resting, just waiting, just one good decision away from finally showing itself. Not trying is the only way to stay ordinary forever. And if you follow that logic far enough, there's a terrifying conclusion waiting at the end of it. If you never try, you get to die believing you were special, without ever proving it. The problem is that life doesn't negotiate with that logic. The years don't pause while you find the perfect moment. And the longer the armor stays on, the more natural it feels, until it stops feeling like protection and starts feeling like personality, like just the way you are, like something you were born with rather than something you quietly built to survive. You didn't inherit this. You learned it. And the world you're walking into now doesn't speak that language at all. At some point, the scoreboard changed. Nobody announced it. There was no transition ceremony. No moment where someone pulled you aside and explained the new rules. One day you were simply inside a world that no longer graded on potential. A world that had no column for could have been exceptional. A world that watched what you actually did and nothing else. And that's when the gap became impossible to ignore. You watched someone you once considered average get promoted. Not because they were brilliant. They weren't, and you both knew it. But they showed up consistently, delivered without drama, and built trust through repetition. You watched someone with half your raw ability launch something, fail publicly, adjust, and launch again, and people respected them for it, not despite the failure, because of what they did after. Meanwhile, you were still waiting for the right moment, the right project, the right version of yourself to finally arrive and do what everyone always assumed you would. But the right moment has a way of shapeshifting. It moves exactly as fast as you chase it. And while you waited, the world kept moving. Indifferent, unhurried, completely unbothered by your potential. Here's what the real world runs on. It runs on consistency. On people who show up imperfectly and improve through contact with reality. On iteration, not inspiration. On done, not perfect. The currency you were given as a child, natural ability, quick comprehension, effortless performance, isn't worthless. But it expires fast when it isn't backed by something sturdier. Potential without execution isn't a promise. It's just a story you tell yourself. And somewhere in the quiet of that realization, a new and deeply uncomfortable feeling started to take shape. One you recognized immediately, even if you'd never had a name for it. You know the feeling. Someone asks what you've been up to, and something tightens in your chest before you answer. You scroll through the achievements of people you grew up with and close the app faster than you opened it. You sit in a room full of people who seem to know exactly where they're going. And you smile and you nod and you say the right things, and inside you're doing quiet calculations about how long before someone notices. Notices what, exactly? That's the strange part. Because this isn't the classic story of someone who feels incompetent. You don't feel incompetent. You know you're intelligent. That part was never the question. What you feel is something more specific and far more disorienting. You feel like someone who was handed an extraordinary hand and somehow still lost the game. And that particular kind of exposure, not, I'm not smart enough, but I'm smart and it still didn't matter, cuts in a place that's much harder to reach. So, you manage it. Carefully. You steer conversations away from your work. You deflect with humor when someone asks about your plans. You frame everything as temporary, a transitional phase, a deliberate pause, a strategic reset. And the performance is convincing because you're good at performance, you always were. But the distance between who you're presenting and what you're actually feeling has been growing for a long time now. And the heaviest part isn't the gap itself, it's the exhaustion of maintaining it. You haven't lost your intelligence. That was never at risk. What eroded, slowly, invisibly, through years of avoidance, was something far more practical. Your tolerance for frustration, your capacity to stay inside discomfort long enough for something real to emerge. That can be rebuilt, but not the way you're expecting. Here's what actually happened. Not the story you've been telling yourself, the one where you wasted your potential, where you somehow took something rare and let it quietly rot. That story feels true, but it's the wrong diagnosis. And wrong diagnoses don't just fail to heal you, they keep you sick in ways that feel like character flaws. You didn't fail because you were weak. Maybe you were never extraordinary. Maybe the praise was inflated. Maybe you were just slightly ahead in a small room. Maybe you failed because you were protecting something. At some point, protecting your potential becomes indistinguishable from wasting it, and the line between caution and cowardice gets thinner than you're comfortable admitting. Every avoided application, every unfinished project, every moment you chose not to try, none of it was laziness. It was loyalty. Loyalty to an identity that was handed to you before you were old enough to question it. You were given a label, told to wear it, rewarded every time it fit, and then sent into a world that would eventually challenge it. Everything that looks like self-destruction from the outside was, from the inside, a perfectly rational act of self-preservation. That's not an excuse, it's a mechanism. And mechanisms can be changed. The moment this shifts from a character judgment to a behavioral pattern is the moment the weight lifts. Not completely, not instantly, but enough. Enough to stop asking what is wrong with me and start asking something infinitely more useful. What was I trained to do, and is it still serving me? Those are different questions. They open different doors. They lead to different lives. You were never broken. You were running a program that made complete sense at 8 years old and quietly became a trap by 30. The fear was real. The protection was real. The cost of it is real too, and you've been paying it for long enough to know exactly what it looks like. But fear that was trained can be retrained. An identity built on one idea can be rebuilt around a better one. The question is no longer whether you're capable. The question is whether you're willing. This is where most people expect a list. 10 habits, 5 morning routines, a productivity system with a satisfying name and a color-coded spreadsheet. And if that's what you're waiting for, this will disappoint you, because the thing that actually breaks this pattern isn't a system, it's a confrontation. Small, deliberate, and deeply uncomfortable. You have to go somewhere you're not good yet. That's it. That's the mechanism. Not motivation, not inspiration, not finally feeling ready, because ready is the trap, and you already know that. The reprogramming happens through exposure, through voluntarily placing yourself inside experiences where you are visibly, undeniably, unimpressively new, where you can't perform your way through it, where the only available move is to be a beginner and let people see it. Post the work before it's perfect. Apply for the thing you don't fully qualify for. Walk into the room where you know the least and stay there long enough for the discomfort to stop feeling like danger. This isn't about lowering your standards. It's about decoupling your standards from your sense of self, so that a rough draft doesn't feel like a confession, and a rejection doesn't feel like a verdict. Every time you do something imperfect in public and survive it, the old equation breaks down a little more. The brain that once filed struggle under threat starts to refile it under process. Slowly, inconsistently, with setbacks that feel like failure, but are actually data. And something unexpected happens along the way. You stop needing the outcome to validate the attempt. The attempt starts to feel like enough, not because you've lowered your ambition, but because you've finally separated who you are from what you produce. That separation is everything. It's the entire game. Identity, it turns out, was never fixed. It was always just waiting to be rewritten. There's a different kind of extraordinary, not the kind that arrives early, announced by gold stars and dinner table comparisons. Not the kind that feels effortless and therefore proves something. That version had an expiration date you didn't know about, and you've already lived past it. What's available now is quieter, slower, and built from completely different materials. It starts with a single shift in the sentence you use to describe yourself. For most of your life, the operating belief was, I am intelligent. Everything flowed from that. Decisions, avoidances, the careful architecture of a life designed to keep that sentence true. But intelligence as identity is a glass foundation, impressive to look at, terrifying to stand on. Because glass doesn't flex. It holds perfectly until it doesn't, and then it doesn't at all. Resilience is different. Resilience is load-bearing. The people who end up doing something real with their lives, not the people who peaked in potential, but the ones who built something that lasted, share almost nothing in terms of raw ability. What they share is a relationship with difficulty that doesn't trigger collapse. They got rejected and reapplied. They shipped bad work and made better work. They were beginners in public repeatedly, without it destroying their sense of who they were. They weren't extraordinary, despite failing. They became extraordinary through it. And that version of extraordinary has no expiration date. It doesn't require a perfect moment or a flawless execution or an audience that already believes in you. It only requires one thing: the willingness to be in progress, visibly, imperfectly, consistently in progress. Not because failure is noble, it isn't, but because the alternative is a life spent guarding a label instead of building a legacy. You were never meant to stay the smartest person in the room. You were meant to outgrow the room entirely. Remember that classroom, the test coming back first. The name said like it meant something. The quiet certainty that you were built for more than most, and that the world would eventually confirm it. That kid wasn't wrong. The potential was real. The feeling wasn't arrogance. It was anticipation. But somewhere between that moment and this one, the strategy broke. Not because you weren't smart enough. Not because the world was unfair or the timing was wrong or the right opportunity never appeared. It broke because you were handed an identity before you had the tools to carry it. And when carrying it got hard, the only move that felt safe was to stop moving altogether. That ends now. Because the person watching this isn't someone who lacks ability. They're someone who learned to protect ability instead of use it. And protection, held long enough, becomes a prison so comfortable you forget it has walls. So here's what you're going to do right now. Not tomorrow. Not after one more week of thinking about it. You're going to drop one thing in the comments. What's the one thing you've been waiting to start until you feel ready? Write it. Make it real. Because naming it is the first act of someone who's done protecting the label. If this hits something deep, share this video with one person who needs it. You already know exactly who they are. And if you want to keep going, subscribe. Because everything we explore on this channel is designed for people who are done being potential and ready to become proof. You were never meant to stay the smartest person in the room. You were meant to outgrow the room entirely.